Hey everyone, CJ DeLeo here from Utterly Nonsense. We haven't had a regular review show here on the channel for a while, so I figured outside of the podcast I would try to record a review or two and see how they went over. So if you like what you hear here, or if there's anything else that can be improved upon in future reviews, make sure you leave a comment and let me know. If you're a first-time viewer on the channel, welcome to Utterly Nonsense. We're an entertainment news and commentary channel that hosts the weekly Utterly Nonsense podcast. There's a lot of other content on the channel, so make sure you subscribe and check out our other videos. So today I'm going to be reviewing Brightburn, which, for anyone who's unfamiliar, is this sort of superhero, supervillain, I guess more accurately, horror film that was from the mind of James Gunn. Well, I shouldn't say from the mind of it. He's a producer on it. His brother and his cousin actually wrote the script. A friend of theirs, David Aaron... I can't even pronounce the guy's last name. David Yarovesky is the guy who directed it. I think it's his first theatrical release, so kind of a cool thing to start out with. So I want to start off by saying this is going to be a spoiler-free review. This is very much off the cuff, so if it sort of sounds like I'm rambling or it's unedited, that's why. So I just want to get my initial thoughts on the table, and, you know, if you like what you hear, make sure you tell me, and I can expand on it or talk about it in a future podcast. Really, I just want to get my thoughts on the table here and let people know whether or not they should see it. So first of all, it very much feels like a Superman film if Superman was basically a psychopathic 11-year-old. And I say that strictly because a lot of what we see in Brightburn really mirrors the Superman story. Like, part of it is this young kid landing in Kansas when he was, I want to say, well, an infant. I don't know how many months old, or they sort of play fast and loose with the timeline. The thing plays a lot like a horror film, and if you're going in here expecting Man of Steel, but as a supervillain, it is a little bit of that, but it's more of a horror film. And, like, really the gore of the film shocked me. The really dark tone of the film shocked me, and I think part of the reason why Brightburn is getting such negative reviews is because people were going in expecting something different. I do want to say I really did enjoy the film. I do have some issues with it, namely the pacing really struck me as odd. It's an hour and a half long, which feels really short considering the subject matter. It was handled pretty well. Like the actual kid, I don't know the actor's name, Jackson something, Pierce? Jackson Dunn is the guy's name, who plays Brendan Breyer / Brightburn. He does really well in the role. Elizabeth Banks is really well cast as his mother. I do want to stress that while James Gunn was a producer for this film, it's not a James Gunn film. You can really tell tonally it's nothing like Guardians of the Galaxy or any of his lesser-known works. Altogether, it's pretty enjoyable. And initial thoughts, like, where it really failed for me is that it didn't really expand all too well on the mythology. Not to get too deep into the actual plot of the thing, but it sort of implied that there's a supernatural element causing Brandon Breyer, who's Brightburn, who's the supervillain Superman, to sort of, like, go into a more psychopathic, more evil direction. They really don't expand upon this beyond the first act of the film. And you sort of get the sense that, despite the fact that this kid is shown to be exceptionally smart, he does a lot of things that make you question his decision-making. And granted, that could be because he's a 12-year-old kid who's not sure of his place in the world, but it's amazing how fast he resorts to, like, pure murder just from having these abilities. I do want to say, while I don't agree with the actual, like, negative rating that it's been getting from a lot of critics, it definitely is not a perfect film. The whole thing that was really great about this film was the premise. You really do get the sense that, you know, this is what would happen if this kid, who was basically bullied all throughout school, who was made fun of for basically being the smart, nerdy guy in the room, if this kid just suddenly found out he had the powers of Superman, I feel like this is one route he could go down. You know, if he wasn't raised with the same sort of Clark Kent sentimentality, this is what we would see, you know? Granted, it does get into some really dark territory. There's some really gory scenes in this movie that are not even touched upon in the trailer. Like, I know there's this whole scene where, this one waitress at this one restaurant gets this glass stuck in her eye, and it's just, like, bloody and gory, and this was in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. That's the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's so much more to this film, just in terms of, like, the dark subject matter, just in terms of the horror elements that really make it more of a horror film than a superhero origin. And again, it does feel more like a supervillain origin film than anything else. You can definitely tell that they're planning on building a bigger universe around this. Like, it's very much, again, not to get into the ending or anything, but it's very much the beginning of things. You can tell that there's going to be a second part to this. You can tell that they're going to expand the storyline. So I want to leave off by saying, if I had to give this a letter grade, it would probably be about a C. Again, not perfect, not the absolute piece of dog shit that people are saying it is on Rotten Tomatoes, but, if you're familiar with the Superman character, if you like to see your expectations subverted, definitely give it a watch. It's pretty cool.